I spent years supporting my family, but they betrayed and used me. When I discovered their lies and manipulation, I collected evidence and exposed them. My brother and his partners faced justice. I protected my mother, rebuilt my life, and finally found freedom, peace, and self-worth. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe. Get ready for real emotional and thrilling stories from Black adults that will keep you hooked till the end. I've always believed that the worst moments in life announce themselves loudly screaming, crashing, breaking. But the night my life fell apart, it arrived quietly. In the soft vibration of a phone on my nightstand, it was 1:47 a.m. I remember, because the glowing numbers on my alarm clock were the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes. I reached for my phone, still half asleep, expecting a meaningless notification maybe, another store coupon or a late-night message from a friend, but the email subject froze me. Urgent. Identity fraud notice, please respond immediately. My heart started pounding so hard I felt it in my teeth. I tapped it open with shaking hands. A loan totaling $40,000 has been issued under your name and social security number. If this was not you, please contact the fraud division immediately. For a few long seconds, I couldn't breathe. My mind was blank, as if someone had slammed a door inside my head and everything went silent. $40,000? Under my name? My social security number? No, that wasn't possible. I sat up straight, suddenly awake, my breath coming quick and uneven. I'd never taken a loan that big. I never even applied for one. My credit was clean. I worked hard to keep it that way. I lived alone, paid my bills on time, and stayed out of trouble. So how did this happen? My first instinct was fear. My second was denial. And my third was suspicion. I knew exactly whose face flashed. Across my mind. Isaac, my older brother. I hated that the thought came so fast. I hated even more that it made sense. Trying not to panic, I opened my banking app and went through my accounts page after page, number after number. There it was, an unfamiliar loan entry with my name attached. My signature was on the documents. But it wasn't my signature. That's when the panic began to rise like water in my throat. My hands were trembling so hard, my phone almost slipped from my fingers. I called my mom. No answer. I called Isaac, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. My chest felt heavy, like the air around me had turned thick. I needed answers, and I needed them now, against my better judgment. I opened our family group chat, and that's where everything truly broke. Between yesterday's messages and the day before's, I noticed texts I hadn't seen, maybe because I muted the chat months ago to protect my sanity. My mom had written, "Good. Finally done." She always thought she was better than us. Isaac replied, "Relax, Mai, her name is clean. No one will suspect anything." Then another message from a cousin I barely talked to. She figured it out eventually, but that's her problem. A coldness spread through my body. They were talking about me. There was no doubt, and what was worse, this wasn't random, it wasn't accidental. It was planned, carefully, silently. Behind my back, I scrolled further. Another message from Isaac. "Don't worry. She won't fight it. She never does." Something inside my chest cracked. For years, I had helped them pay bills when they were behind. Co-signed small loans, covered emergencies. Bought groceries, babysat kids, said yes when I wanted to say no. I thought I was supporting my family, but they turned me into a resource. A tool, an easy target. And now, they'd crossed a line I didn't know they even saw. I sat there in the dark, staring at the screen, feeling my heartbeat echo in my ears. The betrayal was sharp, slicing deep in a way I didn't know betrayal could. The people I trusted, the people who raised me, shared meals with me, laughed with me, they had stolen my identity. I slowly put my phone down and leaned back against the headboard. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. Not yet. Not for them. My apartment felt colder than usual, silent, like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. I looked at my reflection in the dark window, messy hair, tired eyes, face pale from shock, and I whispered to myself, almost afraid to hear it out loud. This wasn't a mistake. This was a betrayal. And then something shifted inside me, a calmness I'd never felt before, a quiet strength, a decision. If my family wanted a war, if they wanted to use my name, my life, my identity, then they were about to learn something very important. I am not as easy to break as they think, and for the first time in my life, I felt it doubt my real story. Was about to begin. Asterisk, I barely slept after the fraudulent email. My mind kept replaying the family group chat over and over like a glitching film reel. Every ugly word carved itself deeper into me dot by morning. I felt like I'd lived a whole year in one night. I knew I couldn't sit still. I needed answers, real ones. Not the ones my family would feed me if I confronted them too early. So I drove to my mother's house. I didn't text. I didn't call. I just showed up. Her house felt smaller than I remembered, like the walls had closed in over the years. Maybe they always had, and I just never noticed. I knocked once. No answer. The silence was weird for a Saturday morning. Usually the TV blasted cooking shows by sunrise. I tried the doorknob. It twisted open. I stepped inside slowly, my heartbeat loud in my ears. Mom? I called. No response. The house smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old perfume. Everything was in its usual place. Couch slightly crooked. Mail stacked on the entry table, a half-folded blanket draped over the armrest, but something felt wrong, not dangerous wrong. Just off, I walked toward my father's old study, the room that had been locked for years, even before he died. My mom always said she kept it closed because too many memories live in there. But today, the door stood open. My stomach tightened. I stepped inside. Dust floated in the sunlight, tea cutting through the blinds. The shelves were still full of his books, politics, business, crime thrillers, but the desk drawers were half open, like someone had been searching for something. My father was a quiet man. Strict, distant, but predictable. He never left drawers open, ever. I felt an uneasy pull toward the wooden floorboards near the desk. I don't know why, just instinct. A whisper in the back of my mind. I knelt and pressed my fingers along the edge of a loose board. It lifted almost too easily. And underneath, it was a small black notebook. Old, worn edges. My father's handwriting on the front, expenses and accounts. But when I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just expenses. It was pages and pages of names. Social security numbers, addresses, transaction logs, fake accounts. And next to each entry, dates and amounts. 10 years worth. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't budgeting. This was fraud. Identity fraud. Financial scams. Lines of numbers that screamed criminal activity. My father, my strict, quiet, always serious father, had been keeping secrets darker than anything I could have imagined. And my family, my mother, my brother, they had known. They weren't victims. They weren't desperate. They were continuing it. I flipped through the pages, my fingers shaking harder the deeper I went, and then I saw it. My name, written in bold, dark ink. Maya Collins, projected credit potential, high. Clean record. A note beneath it, use sparingly until necessary. Necessary. I couldn't breathe. I kept reading. Isosceles. Needs supervision. Involved for cover if required. Keep Maya unaware. My father wrote this. About me. About using me. About controlling me. My throat tightened as tears blurred the ink on the page. Not just from betrayal, but from the realization that maybe I'd never been loved the way I thought. I wasn't a daughter. I was an asset. I pressed my palm over my mouth to stop a sob from escaping. The house felt like it was closing in on me, walls shrinking, air thinning. For years, I thought my family simply relied on me too much. I never imagined they'd been planning to use me long before I even understood what a credit score was. I snapped the notebook shut and heard footsteps. Behind me, I whipped around. It was my mother. Her expression froze the second. She saw the notebook in my hand, not shocked, not sadness. But fear. Where did you get that? She demanded, her voice sharp, almost panicked. I found it, I said, my voice shaking with anger. In the floorboard. She stepped toward me too quickly. Give it to me, Maya? No. My voice surprised even me, strong, solid, unmovable. Her eyes hardened. That softness I always believed she had. It wasn't there. Maybe it never had been. You don't understand what you're doing, she hissed. Put it back. I understand more than you think, I whispered. You used my name. My identity. You and Isaac, you don't know anything, she snapped, but I did. I knew enough to feel my world shift beneath my feet. I took a step back, holding the notebook to my chest like a shield. You lied to me my whole life, I said. All of you did. She opened her mouth to speak. But I didn't let her. I turned and walked out. My hands were still trembling. But my footsteps were steady, because now I had something I didn't have before. Proof. And they had no idea what I planned to do with it. I didn't go home right away. After leaving my mother's house with the black notebook pressed against my chest, I drove around the city with no destination, just streets and traffic lights, blurring past me while my thoughts circled like vultures. The notebook sat on the passenger seat, heavy like a confession no one ever meant me to hear. By the time I reached the downtown area, the sky had turned to pale gray. My hands were still shaky, but my mind was sharper than it had been in days. I had a name, a loan amount, fraudulent signatures, and now a record of identity theft going back a decade. But I needed one more thing, evidence linking Isaac directly to the loan. So I made a decision. Drove to the bank. The same bank where the $40,000 loan had been issued in my name. I parked, grabbed my purse and the notebook, and walked toward the tall glass doors. Inside, everything looked painfully normal. Fluorescent lights. Carpet that smelled like old printer ink. A bored security guard is scrolling on his phone. The woman at the customer service desk smiled politely when I approached. How can I help you? I need to speak to your fraud specialist, I said calmly. It's urgent. Her smile faded just a little. Of course. One moment. She disappeared into a back office, leaving me with nothing but the soft hum of the AC and the pounding of my heart. A few minutes later, a man in his late 50s emerged. Clean suit, silver hair, glasses that made him look wiser than his job probably required. He extended his hand. Eimer Walters. You're Ms. Collins, correct? Unfortunately, yes, I said. He gestured for me to follow him into a private room. The door shut behind us with a soft click. So, he said, folding his hands, you believe a loan was taken out in your name without your consent? I don't believe it, I said. I know it. I placed the notebook on the table, his eyebrows lifted. May I? Yes. He opened it, scanned a few pages, and his expression shifted. From curiosity to concern to something else. Something like alarm. This is not good, he murmured. Where did you find this? In my late father's study. I swallowed. Hidden. He closed the notebook carefully, as if afraid it might fall apart in his hands. Miss Collins, he said slowly, I can't officially comment on what's in this, but I can tell you that it indicates serious, organized criminal activity. My stomach clenched. I know. He looked at me a moment longer, then stood. There's something you need to see. He guided me to a small screen on the wall, typed in a series of codes, and pulled up internal footage from the day the loan was issued. Grainy, black and white. And soul-crushing. At first, I didn't recognize the man sitting at the desk until he turned his head. Isaac. My brother, smiling, calm, comfortable, like he had done this 100 times. A woman sat next to him, tall, with braided hair, wearing oversized sunglasses. Her head was down most of the time, but I recognized her too. My mother's cousin, Patrice. She was pretending to be me. My throat tightened as I watched her sign the documents. Signing my name, my identity, my life. Mr. Walters paused the footage and turned to me gently. Maya, I'm very sorry you're seeing this, but you needed to. I stared at the frozen image of Isaac leaning back in his chair like he owned the world. They planned everything. I whispered. They used people they trusted. People who knew me. They knew your credit would go through, he said quietly. They knew you wouldn't question anything. I closed my eyes for a moment, fighting the burning pressure behind them. When I opened them again, something inside me had hardened. Can I get a copy of this footage? I asked. He hesitated. Officially, I shouldn't. Unofficially. He slid a USB drive across the table. You didn't get it from me. I took it with trembling fingers. Thank you. As I stood to leave, he gave me a long, pained look. Miss Collins, he said gently, whoever did this didn't just steal your identity. They betrayed your trust on a level most people never experience. I nodded, swallowing the ache in my throat. I know, I whispered, and I'm going to make sure they never do it again. When I walked out of the bank, the sky had darkened. A storm was coming, thick clouds rolling in like bruises across the horizon. I tightened my grip on the USB in my pocket, let it storm, because now I had proof, and someone in my family was about to face me. Asterisk after leaving Mom's house, I sat in my car for a long time without starting the engine. The wind pushed softly against the windows, but inside the car, everything felt frozen. My thoughts, my breath, my ability to move. I had answers now. But they only opened more questions. My mother was sick. She needed treatment. She needed someone beside her. Someone she trusted. And somehow, even after all my running, she still wanted that someone to be me. The guilt settled deep in my chest. Heavy and cold, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. What am I supposed to do now? I whispered to myself. I didn't dare to face the world yet. So I just sat there until my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Marcus. Just checking in. Hope you're okay. I stared at the words for a moment, feeling something warm spread through the chaos. It was strange how someone could be so gentle without even realizing how much it meant. After a moment, I typed back, "Can we meet?" He replied almost instantly. "Name the place." I took a deep breath and sent the address of the small lakeside park near my apartment, a quiet place where I could breathe without feeling watched. The meeting when I arrived at the park. The wind carried the smell of water and damp leaves. The sky was heavy with thick gray clouds that looked ready to burst into rain at any moment. Marcus was already there, leaning against a wooden railing overlooking the lake. His hands were in his pockets, his shoulders slightly tense like he was worried about what he would hear. When he saw me, his expression softened. Hey, I said back, suddenly aware of how tired I sounded. He watched me carefully. Rough day? You could say that. We walked along the edge of the lake in silence for a bit. Birds skimmed across the water, making soft ripples. Every few steps, I felt him glance at me, waiting patiently. Finally, I sighed. I talked to my mother. That's good, right? In some ways. But it was a lot. I looked down at my hands. She's been hiding her illness for months. She didn't want me to know because she thought I'd feel responsible. Marcus slowed his steps. I'm sorry. That must have been hard to hear. It was. But what's worse is, she needs someone to take care of her. My voice cracked. And she didn't want to ask me. He stopped walking and gently touched my arm. Listen to me. That's not your fault. I felt my throat close. The warmth of his hand, the calmness in his voice, it almost broke me. Marcus? I whispered. I don't know what to do. He looked at me, really looked at me, as if trying to read the parts I wasn't saying. You'll figure it out. You always do. But you don't have to do it alone. His words landed deeper than I expected. I inhaled shakily, turning my face away so he wouldn't see the tears building, but he did. And he stepped closer anyway. Hey, he said softly, you're allowed to feel overwhelmed. A tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it quickly, embarrassed. I don't usually cry. Maybe you should, he said gently. There was something in his voice, something safe, steady, unshakable. Something I hadn't felt in a long time, but before I could respond, a sharp ringtone cut through the air. My phone. I checked the screen, and my heart dropped. It was my mother's doctor. Fear raced through my body, so fast that I nearly dropped the phone. Answer it. Marcus said quietly, his expression turning serious. I pressed the phone to my ear with trembling fingers. Hello? Is this her daughter? The doctor's voice was calm but heavy. Yes, I whispered. Is everything okay? He sighed. Your mother insisted she was fine, but she collapsed a few minutes ago. She's stable now, but we need you to come to the hospital. The world around me tilted. Collapsed? Stable? Hospital? My pulse hammered so loudly that I barely heard myself say, I am coming. When the call ended, my hands were shaking uncontrollably. Marcus stepped forward instantly. What happened? She collapsed, I stuttered. I have to go. I'll drive, he said without hesitation. I opened my mouth to protest, but there was no time, no strength. No sense in pretending I could handle this alone. He took my keys, grabbed my hand, and led me toward the parking lot. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. My body moved on instinct, while my mind spiraled with fear. My mother had collapsed. The illness was worse than she admitted. And I was running out of time. As we sped toward the hospital, one terrifying thought consumed me. What if the truth she wasn't ready to tell me dies with her? The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear. I followed Marcus down the fluorescent-lit hallways, the echo of our shoes bouncing against the linoleum floor. My stomach was twisting into knots, and I felt like I was moving through a dream, one of those nightmares where everything is slightly wrong, slightly off, and you know you can't wake up. They took me to my mother's room. She was lying on the bed, pale, eyes half closed, a monitor beeping beside her. Tubes ran from her arms into plastic bags of fluids. The sight made my chest tighten so sharply I could barely breathe. "Mom," I whispered, rushing to her side. I held her hand, warm but weak, in mine. She squeezed back, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "Maya, you came." "Of course I came," I said, fighting to hold back the tears. "You scared me." She closed her eyes. "I didn't want to worry you." "You don't get to do that," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "I'm your daughter. You tell me the truth, no matter what." She looked at me, her eyes glistening, and I felt that old, complicated mix of love, frustration, and sorrow that had always existed between us. Then, almost reluctantly, she spoke. "There's more," she said. I froze. My heart pounded. I already knew about the notebook, the fraud, the loan. But something in her voice told me there were deeper layers, things I wasn't prepared for. She swallowed and whispered, "Isaac, he's not just involved in the loan. He's part of something bigger." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "The fraud, the loan. It's part of a network, small, but organized. People we know, family and friends, helped him. It wasn't just a one-time thing. He's been doing this for years." I gripped her hand tightly. "Are you serious?" She nodded weakly. "I wanted to stop him. I tried, but I couldn't. And now he's in too deep. You have to be careful." The room spun. I felt like I could fall right through the floor. My brother, my own blood. All those nights I thought he was harmless, just annoying. And he had been lying, using me. Using Mom. Everything. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process it all. That's when Marcus cleared his throat. "You're not alone in this," he said, quietly but firmly. "We need someone to help you navigate this, legally, safely. You can't face him alone." I looked at him, skeptical but desperate. "What do you mean?" "I know someone," he said. "A private investigator. Good, discreet. Experienced in cases like this." He paused, gauging my reaction. "I can set up a meeting. You need evidence, and you need protection." I hesitated. My instinct screamed caution, but I also knew he was right. Marcus wasn't the kind of person to push me into danger. And I couldn't fight this alone. Not anymore. "Okay," I said finally. "Set it up." The meeting 2 days later, I met the investigator in a small, dim office on the edge of the city. His name was Ethan Reyes, mid-30s, sharp eyes, calm but intense. He didn't waste time on pleasantries, so he said, spreading out a few papers and files on his desk, "You're Maya Collins. You believe your brother and some relatives have used your identity and possibly committed fraud." I nodded. "Yes, I have proof. A notebook from my father's old study and some bank records." He raised an eyebrow. "Good, that's more than most people get before they release their in over their heads." I didn't like the way he said that. "In over my head?" He leaned back in his chair. "Isaac doesn't just take small risks. He's involved with people who could hurt you or your mother if they knew you were digging." My stomach churned. "How do you know?" "I've been watching him," he said calmly. "And I know the network. Your identity wasn't the first he exploited, and it won't be the last if we don't act fast." I swallowed hard, fear mixed with anger, and suddenly I felt alive in a way I hadn't for months. For years, I had been the one giving everything money, support, trust, while they manipulated me. But now, for the first time, I had someone in my corner who knew the rules of this dangerous game. "What do we do?" I asked, gripping the edge of the desk. Ethan smiled faintly, almost approvingly. "First, we gather everything: financial records, digital copies, photos, bank statements. Every scrap of evidence that shows who did what. Then we figure out how to protect you and take the necessary legal steps to make sure your family can't touch your life again." I nodded, a fire igniting in my chest. This wasn't just about protecting myself anymore, it was about taking back control. About standing up to the people who had used me, the people I loved, and proving that I wasn't a victim. And Marcus? I asked. He's involved? He's your ally, Ethan said. But even allies have limits. You need to be careful who knows everything. Right now, it's just you, me, and our trustworthy friends. I clenched my fists, determination settling over me like armor. I'd spent so long bending to my family's rules, hiding my feelings, sacrificing for their comfort. But now that's stopped. This was my move. I want to start immediately, I said, my voice firm. No more delays. Ethan nodded. Good, then let's get to work. As I left his office, the sun was dipping below the skyline, painting everything gold and red. The city seemed sharper, louder, more alive. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe, but the thought that haunted me as I walked to my car was sharp and undeniable. Isaac wouldn't stop. And the deeper I dug, the more dangerous this would get. But I didn't care. I was ready. Asterisk, the night was darker than usual. The city streets slick with rain that reflected the neon lights like scattered diamonds. I drove slowly, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind racing faster than the car. My apartment had become a trap. Every time I looked at my father's notebook, the bank statements, the surveillance footage, I saw a maze of lies, deception, and betrayal. My family had used me. My own brother had plotted against me. And now I had the proof. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, heavier than the raincoat wrapped around my shoulders. My heart was pounding, not just from fear, but from realization that tonight I had to make a decision. Do I confront them? Do I go to the authorities? Or do I wait, letting them believe I was still blind, still obedient, still their pawn? I parked my car near the abandoned pier by the river, the one place I went when I needed to think clearly. The wind cut through the city like knives, stinging my face, and I hugged myself tightly. I opened the notebook, tracing my father's handwriting with trembling fingers. Each name, each transaction, each note of betrayal. It was all real. And it all pointed to one truth. I could no longer pretend. For years, I had been their financial backbone, their protector, their unwitting accomplice, and now the scales had shifted. I had the tools to fight back. Asterisk, my phone buzzed, breaking the tension. It was Marcus. Are you okay? He asked. His voice was calm, steady, and grounding. I think so, I whispered. But I can't do this alone. You won't have to, he said. You have the proof, Maya. Now it's about strategy. He was right. I wasn't alone. I had allies and I had power. The realization made my chest tighten not with fear, but with anticipation. I had spent too long feeling helpless. Tonight, that would end. Asterisk, I spent the next hour piecing together what I knew. Isaac had forged documents, stolen money, and manipulated family members. Patrice had been in on it, and my mother, she had tried to stop it, but fear and illness had held her back. I couldn't wait for someone else to fix it. I had to act. I would gather all the evidence, bank statements, emails, videos, witness accounts, and present it in a way that left no room for manipulation. I would protect myself. I would protect my mother. And I would make sure Isaac and his accomplices couldn't ever hurt anyone else. As I made notes and organized files, a shiver ran down my spine. I wasn't just planning legal action. I was planning a reckoning. Asterisk, as I stepped outside to get some air, I noticed a shadow moving near the street lamp across the pier. My heart skipped a beat. Who's there? I called, trying to keep my voice steady. A man stepped forward from the shadows, hands raised. Maya? It was Ethan, the private investigator. His coat was soaked from the rain, his expression serious. You're out late, he said. Dangerously late. They could be watching. I needed clarity, I admitted. I needed to feel like I wasn't trapped in my own fear anymore. Ethan nodded. Good. Fear can freeze people. You're doing the opposite. You're taking control. I felt a spark of confidence I hadn't felt in years. For so long, I had let them control me, manipulate me, and use me. But tonight, I was reclaiming my life. Standing there on the wet pier, rain washing over me, I realized something crucial. I wasn't a victim. I'd been pushed, tested, and betrayed, but I was also resilient, smart, and capable. I clenched my fists. I would confront the truth head-on. I would gather my evidence, protect my mother, and hold my family accountable. For years, I had sacrificed for them. But now it was time to sacrifice nothing for anyone who didn't deserve it. The night seemed to whisper around me, the city lights reflecting on the river, shimmering like the path ahead. It wasn't going to be easy. Isaac was cunning and the network ran deep. But for the first time, I felt ready. Not just to fight back, but to win. And in that moment, standing alone in the rain with Ethan by my side, I decided I would not be afraid anymore. I would take my life back, would reclaim everything they tried to steal from me. The morning was quiet, almost eerily so. The city was just waking up and the streets glistened from last night's rain. I stood in my apartment, staring at the pile of evidence spread across the table: bank statements, emails, surveillance footage, and my father's notebook. Everything was ready. Every bit of proof I needed to expose Isaac and the network was here. I took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of fear, anger, and clarity. For years, I had let my family manipulate me, guilt me, and exploit my generosity. But today I was taking control. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my mother's security. Marcus was waiting outside in his car, quiet but vigilant. I grabbed the USB drive with the surveillance footage, the folders of documents, and my phone. I slipped on my coat and walked out the door, my heart steady. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. Not in a reckless, vengeful way, but in a calm, unwavering way that comes from knowing you are right and prepared. We drove to the small, discreet office Ethan had arranged, a neutral space where Isaac wouldn't expect us. Ethan met us there, already setting up a laptop and projector. I watched as he organized everything, explaining each step to me. "This is how we do it," he said. "You show them the evidence, everything. There's no room to manipulate. There's no escape." I nodded, gripping the USB drive like a weapon and a shield all at once. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my mother, for all the years I'd sacrificed, and for the truth. When Isaac arrived, I felt a jolt of anger and betrayal. He stood there, confident as ever, a smug smile on his face. He had no idea what was coming. "Hello, Maya," he said, voice smooth, almost mocking. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked over to the projector, inserted the USB, and pressed play. The grainy surveillance footage filled the screen. Isaac and Patrice signing documents, exchanging envelopes, manipulating accounts. Then came the emails, the spreadsheets, the notes from my father's notebook. Every single lie, every act of betrayal, every fraudulent transaction lay bare in front of him. His smile faltered. For the first time, I saw fear. You. "You can't," he stammered, but I cut him off. "Yes, I can," I said firmly. "And I will. This ends today." The accomplices, some of whom had been seated nervously in the room, shifted uncomfortably. Ethan had coordinated everything with law enforcement. Hidden cameras, transcripts, and verified evidence were ready. Isaac had no allies left. I felt a wave of vindication wash over me. The power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the victim. I was the orchestrator of justice. The authorities arrived shortly after, and I watched as Isaac and his accomplices were led away. The smugness, the manipulation, the lies all gone in an instant. The relief was overwhelming, but it was tempered by the knowledge of how deep the betrayal ran. After the chaos ended, I returned home. The apartment felt different, somehow lighter, freer. The burden I had carried for years, the guilt, the manipulation, the constant obligation to sacrifice was gone. I could finally breathe. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, and called my mother. "Mom," I said softly, "it's over." Her voice trembled with relief and tears. "Maya, you did it. You saved us." "No," I corrected gently. "We did it. You taught me to be strong even when it felt impossible. And I finally learned that strength doesn't mean sacrificing yourself endlessly. It means standing up when it matters most." She cried softly on the line, and I felt a profound sense of closure. For years, I had questioned my worth, my role in the family, and whether love always meant giving until you're empty. Now, you understand, real love doesn't exploit. Real love doesn't demand sacrifice at the cost of your own life. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and recovery. Isaac was held accountable. The accomplices faced consequences. My mother received the treatment she needed, supported fully and safely this time, and I began to rebuild. I moved to a new apartment, one that felt like my own, one that wasn't haunted by betrayal. I reconnected with friends who truly cared about me, not for what I could give, but for who I was. And I allowed myself to be vulnerable with Marcus, who had been my anchor through the storm. For the first time, I allowed myself to hope, to dream, to be happy. Asterisk sitting by the window one evening, watching the sunset spill gold across the city, I reflected on the journey. Years of sacrifice had taught me resilience. Betrayal had taught me boundaries. And justice had taught me power. I was no longer just Maya Collins, the daughter, the financial backbone, the victim. I was Maya Collins, the woman who reclaimed her life, who faced her family's betrayal, and who refused to be manipulated ever again. And as I took a deep breath, letting the city lights flicker around me, I whispered to myself, I am free. I am worthy. I am unstoppable. And for the first time in my life, I truly believed it.